Family Guy released a Halloween special, or just a Halloween episode titled, the episode is called Peter Pumpkin Eater. It's sort of two plots. I don't know if it's A plot or B plot or Peter plot and then Stewie and Brian plot, I guess. But Peter, Cleveland, and Quagmire are hanging out with the guy in the wheelchair, whatever his name is, I'm sorry, and find out he's going to have this huge pumpkin. He's trying to make the biggest pumpkin in this pumpkin competition because his wife is always hanging out with this guy voiced by Glenn Powell, who usually wins the pumpkin thing, and they're like, oh, what is he doing with that guy? And they're always like, they're just doing pumpkin stuff, which I don't know what that, it's a fun enough joke. Joe, I'm sorry, Austin, Joe. And so they're going to remove this pumpkin because they're kind of annoyed by how big it is and stuff, and they break it, and then Peter has to be in the pumpkin, and hilarity ensues. The other plot, which is kind of like maybe the more fun, more horror one's just like Halloween festivities, and one is horror, which is Stewie and Brian. They're supposed to dress up as Sonny and Cher, with Stewie being Cher and Brian being Sonny. But Brian doesn't want to do that because he's going to hang out with his friends, but he has no friends. And when he talks about his friends, they're people he barely knows. But Stewie's upset, and he makes kind of a wish to his bear that he wish he could kill Brian. He says no takes backsies. And he tries to then, right after he tried to make his bear Rupert make him live, but it didn't work. But then he says that to the bear, and he becomes sentient, and he tries to kill Brian and stuff. This was sort of fine. It was a fun, decent special. I think it's better than the SpongeBob one, Creepaway Camp. It's a lot better than that. I thought it was fine for that. But I would say they did have one joke. They kept saying people who dress like Sonny look like Anthony Kiedis, and they would just cut to a picture of Anthony Kiedis and like, sorry, Rockstar's age, weird. And like, I know people slag off the Red Hot Chili Peppers a lot, which I don't. They're not my favorite, but I never understood the hate either. But it did make me laugh because Anthony Kiedis does look like Sonny Bono at this point. But that I laughed each time. I will admit I LOL'd at the Anthony Kiedis joke. The rest wasn't very funny. But I will say, as I watched a lot of Halloween specials, I think there's kind of two things that this does right that a lot of Halloween specials fail at. I don't think this is a new classic. I think it's pretty standard. In general, it was like okay, whatever episode of a long-running animated sitcom kind of thing. But I think like you have to have a horror thing and someone who actually likes horror movies. I think oftentimes you can sort of tell when someone doesn't really know horror movies and they're making one of these. It seemed like they actually sort of liked horror and understood how to get that to work with the characters, which I applaud them for that. I thought that actually worked, the Brian and Stewie plot, and had enough weird, like the Sonny and Cher thing was a little odd. Like it had enough interesting things in it. Like that was really the best part of the show. The Peter Pumpkin thing with Glenn Powell. I don't know why Glenn Powell was in this. That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. It was kind of a dumb thing. I noticed like they'll sometimes just cut to like a weird joke, and I was like, okay, maybe that's just a regular Family Guy thing. Oh, and thank you, Cornbread, for mentioning this. They did this one joke that did not play well for me, where it was like they had this joke where Rupert said he was like, I'll do this after I eat some Doritos, and he goes, it was either this or we fire 3 of our writers, which like I was like, maybe that's funny. It kind of made me go like, well, you're a Family Guy though, you're very well funded, you're getting specials on a streaming service, like do we like want to make product placement jokes about firing animation writers in 2024? Like I didn't love that. It was a fine episode. It was solid. I don't watch Modern Family Guy. I have no clue what it's like. But I didn't really think it was like, if you like Family Guy and you're like, should I watch? I'm like, yeah, but it's not one that like, if you haven't watched in a while, I wouldn't overly recommend it. I'm sort of like, it at least brought the baseline level for a Halloween special. It definitely got what it was supposed to do. You're supposed to have horror in there. You're supposed to actually like horror. do that in there and also do some festive Halloween stuff. And they did that well. They had trick-or-treating, they had pumpkins, they had all this stuff. I'm sort of generally cool with this. Like, they in general did what they're supposed to do, and they did it decently well. It just doesn't really stand out to me at all. They probably, and also of the Griffins, it was basically just like Stewie, Peter, and Brian. Like, the other characters were barely there. I think Lois shows up at the end, and it was like, okay, like, it was like, that was a little odd. I mean, but it was fine. I don't really think it. What was weird is, I will say this, is I actually thought that this was longer for some reason. Like, the SpongeBob one, and I'm sure no one's making this comparison, but I am, because this is the two I've watched this year, is that was like 45 minutes, which is longer, which I get. It's like, oh, it's a streaming thing, it can be longer. I actually thought this was longer. It's just a standard episode. It seems like they just made another episode. There's nothing necessarily different about it. It feels like they can just throw it in the syndication order later, if they still have that. I don't know. So anyway, whatever. This was fine. It was a fun show to watch while I had lunch. It was a fine Halloween special if you want to watch one as you're drinking beers after Halloween. It gets the job done, and it does it pretty well, and it understands what a Halloween special can be. But is this anything other than kind of standard? No, it's not. It's nothing really that special. It's only, doing the decent job of making a bearable, pun intended maybe, Family Guy episode for Halloween. And I guess it succeeds in just being the base level of what it is.